Hey, this is Sandy.
And Randy.
And we're here on AT Corner.
Being an athlete trainer comes with ups and downs, and we're here to showcase it all.
Join us as we share our world in sports medicine.
Welcome back to another episode of AT Corner. We are back, baby. Drum roll. Season 5. Here we come.
Hey, that's new.
Hey,
I don't think I've heard you do a drum roll before.
At least it's been a while. But we can add the burr, 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 burr at
Okay,
any
there.
minute.
Nothing's changed.
There we go. Just the classic.
So today's episode is a story episode about onboarding, starting fresh. I figured we're starting, people might be starting new jobs, new rotations if you're a student.
Also, just a new athletic year.
Right. It's just fall. Fall's here.
Fall is here. You know how they say winter is coming? No, fall is coming.
No, it's here.
Yeah, fall is here.
Actually, this was inspired by my current students who are currently asking me a bunch of questions about onboarding. And I was like, you know what? Actually, this is a really good point because people do onboarding so differently.
And you forget how important onboarding is until you kind of go to a place where maybe the onboarding wasn't quite what you wanted it to be.
Right. And some people don't do onboarding.
Exactly. And then you're like, oh boy, what do I do?
I had a job that 2 athletic trainers left at the same time. And so then I was just like kind of thrown in.
Yeah.
Which we'll talk about. But I was kind of thinking like my experience was unique. But then realizing like there are a bunch of places where you don't get your onboarding from an athletic trainer necessarily.
Yeah.
Because what about those places that you only have one AT? Like, of course they're not going to be there.
For sure. And yeah, I've been able to experience kind of a range of onboarding from like a very organized and structured to kind of just informal and stuff like that. So yeah, I've definitely, I haven't been in that situation where there was no one absolutely there to onboard me. Right. So that is a very unique experience. And like, how do you? Well,
there's not that there was no one. The athletic director.
That's true.
Took over that role.
That's true.
For me. So 79% of people on our poll on our Instagram story said that other ATs helped them onboard the most. However, we did also get 10% saying athletic directors were the onboarders. 4% said principal, dean, or some other admin. Mm-hmm. And then 7% said other.
Ooh. Wonder what the other is.
I'm not sure what the other was.
That's kind of interesting.
I'm sure it was a variety.
Probably. I mean, I'm sure probably some coaches.
That's what I was
probably
thinking.
Helped
coaches,
with like certain aspects of it. Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Probably someone within the. I wonder if any like school nurses for high schools. I mean.
Oh, true.
I don't know.
It's a good question. I don't know.
I'm trying to think of when I was at the high school. Although I was contracted out, so it was kind of. I was like onboarded to the company.
Yes.
No, well, not really.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like...
Again, very informal.
Right. I feel like per diem work, you really don't get a lot of onboarding.
No, the only like thing that you would kind of be onboarded to is like you said, like the company. Like what the company policies are.
Like the concussion policy, the standing orders, like kind of stuff like that. Like who's your physician and stuff like that. Yeah.
And like how you would handle how the company wants you to handle like certain like you said
documentation,
like procedures. Yeah, that's true. Per diem is kind of interesting. I mean, per diem's interesting all the way around.
Yeah, we do have an episode about that of just because you need to ask so many questions. That's what I learned. You have to ask so many questions before you just accept a per diem job.
Yes, you do.
You can't just be like, oh, sure.
Yeah, no, because that's when you find yourself in some again interesting situations.
Yes,
and how you end up covering like 40 courts for one AT.
No thanks. Do you feel like your job did a good job onboarding you? Do you feel like your jobs in general have done a good job onboarding you?
I've had a mix.
Yeah, I think I've had a mix too.
I've had a mix of, again, it really goes into the ones that were structured and formal and the ones that were more informal. So I would say I've had a split where I've had like 2 jobs I've done really well, and then I've had 2 jobs that maybe not as well as what I would have hoped for, I would say, or what I had envisioned.
I feel like this is a little bit hard for me to answer because of how I feel like my situations have just been so unique. And a couple of the jobs that I've had, I have either had as as a rotation
Mm-hmm.
and then later got a job there, or I was there as a part-time and then later got a job there. So it's hard for me to, because like in those situations, like I mean, of course, the first time I was onboarded, it's one way. Like, but my role has changed in both situations.
Yeah.
So it's like I get a different onboarding process than if someone who was just completely fresh.
For sure.
So it's hard for me to say exactly.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I think one of the best onboardings was probably when I was a grad assistant. And maybe some of that is because like, oh, you're kind of like a you're not necessarily like you're a newer certified, you're more like kind of a part-time kind of like a grad assistant, like your role is slightly different, but it was very structured. They kind of like made sure you understand here are how we do things, like your referrals and like how to handle this, a review of policies and procedures, stuff like that, which I had the advantage of, like I was a student there before, so like some of it I already knew, so it was nice to also get more in depth at the same time.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So I did ask this question on our Instagram stories. 46% of people, the majority, said no, I needed more info on the onboarding. Like they didn't feel like their job did a good job onboarding.
Yeah, I feel that. I definitely felt that before.
But you know what? Honestly, actually, let me before I get sidetracked. 40% said I was partially ready. I
feel like that's like, even though
I expected that to be the majority.
I feel like this is like what, like I would assume the average, most people, if you were to ask them. So yeah,
like I got a little bit of an onboarding, but like I wish I would have known what to do in this situation.
Like I felt kind of prepared, but not all the way.
Only 13% of people who responded to our poll said yes, I was prepared.
I feel like I would have expected that.
Right.
I don't know if I've met a lot of people that feel their onboarding was perfect.
But here's the thing, and I'm trying to think of like, if you think of different settings, how many ATs have been onboarded at that setting? So like, for example, my current job, I am the 6th athletic trainer to be a full-time at my job. The last time they hired an athletic trainer at my job before me was 10 years ago.
That's true.
And before that, it was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So I think depending on your setting, like I think the bigger, like, you know, your D1s that have like 14 to 20 athletic trainers, or the ones who have like a lot of turnover, it makes more sense that they'd have like an onboarding process, right? Because they are doing it more often. But like my job currently, the last time they did this was 10 years ago. So even that onboarding process might be outdated.
I was also going to say on the flip side of that, like you're saying, like having a big staff, you know, with a lot of turnover. Yes, they do onboarding a lot, but that doesn't mean their onboarding might be as, they might just perpetually just not do very well at onboarding too. So that does happen too.
But it is
they're
come
used
up
to it
more frequently.
Yes, they're used to it.
So that it exactly. So that they yes.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. Like it's hard to like do an onboarding when the last person you onboarded was 20 years ago, and like how many things have changed within 20 years at your workplace.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
Also, how much has the profession changed?
Yeah, for sure. 100%.
You know? So also there's the onboarding with like HR and stuff, and then there's the onboarding with the actual I always explain this when I talk to like other people about this. Like I always explain this, like I know how to do my job as an athletic trainer. I don't know how to do my job as an athletic trainer at this site.
Yeah.
Because like you can like rock concussions, know everything about concussions, but you might not know how to deal with the policy at your site.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Also too, on the like going from the other side of it of being in a position to have to onboard somebody, it is hard too, because like a lot of times like you don't remember everything that they need to know right then and there, until something like they need to know, and then they ask. All right, so that is the hard part, is you're trying to remember everything that they need to know, but there's always that one little detail that you're like, oh, you should have, like, we should have told you this. Right. So that is, on the flip side, it is hard to onboard somebody too, because you're trying to remember everything. But yeah, onboarding is just a very tricky thing.
So my last job, our athletic director requested that the athletic trainers before they leave, put together a document.
It's a great idea.
That was basically like logins for sportswear and like kind of like stuff like that. Or like contact info and, you know.
That's a great idea.
It was only a few pages. Like it wasn't like anything but it was helpful.
I was gonna say, I'm sure it's better than what some other ATs have gotten like at starting a new job. So I'm sure that was that's gonna be super helpful.
Right. I mean, like I've started a job where like I don't know where anything is. Yeah. Did we even have policies and procedures? I have no idea.
For sure.
I've had jobs where they've handed me keys and I have no idea what they go to.
Hey, here are your keys.
Or like one job I spent the first maybe 2 weeks trying to figure out where, like there was a locked cabinet. That locked cabinet was locked for probably 6 weeks. And we actually had to call someone to come get it unlocked because I couldn't find the key for it. Yeah. And it was our medicine cabinet. That's annoying. So literally I was going through every single drawer and like reorganizing things, obviously like making it our own, right? And finding keys. Yeah. And now I'm finding like more and more keys and I'm not sure what they're going to.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah. And no one was able to tell me about, it was.
Yeah, I had to do that too.
An adventure.
Like, at one spot, like the facility was pretty new and like the cabinets were all locked for some reason and no one had a key.
Oh, wow.
Like none of the current staff had the key. So no one knows where this key is. So we had to call the locksmith to make new keys.
I don't think I knew that actually.
Yeah.
That's really funny. Okay, so going into our first story, Anonymous says, I was basically given a laptop, told my email login info, and sent to go on my own to go get my picture taken for my ID card.
That's nice.
Within the first week, I was told where our policies and procedures were, but to look over them myself. Over the next 6 months, other ATs would tell me about various forms, websites, or online documents I was supposed to be utilizing that weren't in our official policies and procedures.
Oof.
It was a mess. I have now taken over onboarding. While it still takes a while because you can't cover every scenario in a day, I think they are much more prepared. I have a full document that's a checklist of all the things we have to do on each day.
That's nice.
So day 1, HR, key checkout, ID, swipe access, facility tour, intros to coworkers and for their sport, etc. We go to IT for laptop and email setup and online workbook access because we use Dropbox, Teams, and Google products. And then day 2 is more computer-based. We go over policies and procedures, where to find them for reference, set up EMR access, and other electronic databases we use, the doctor's EMR that we have access to, blood work results, compliance, etc.
That's cool.
And introductions to each of those. Day 3 is a day-to-day unwritten policies and procedures, such as the referral process, insurance paperwork, how to check out modalities, how we do laundry, opening and closing the ATR each day, our weekly ATR cleaning checklist, etc. Then be available at the start and end for questions each day for the next 2 weeks.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Right.
See,
right.
I like that. Nice and structured. And
right.
You're trying to cover as much as you can think of.
Right.
Nice. That's cool.
And it's like very structured. Like there's, you have an idea of, here's the thing. And I know people like different things and some people are like more hands-on and some people are more lax. Like I feel like when it comes to policies, you have to be a little bit more structured no matter what your preference is, because it's one thing to be aware of the policy, but it's also another thing to actually be able to enforce it.
Yes.
So like, let's say, I don't know, lightning happens, like, you know where the policy is.
Yeah.
But like, do you know how to get the people out of the stands, or like who to talk to, or like, exactly, like the implementation of the policies.
Yeah. I
know you know how to take care of a concussion, but do you know like which physician you're referring to, or like what you need to refer them, or like if you need to do like stuff like that?
Yeah,
like,
that's
what
to
do with
thing.
The insurance.
Oh, yeah, that's a fun one.
Yeah. I had a job that had multiple different clinics, and each clinic we had to do an onboarding process for. That was, some were like 1 day and some were like 2 days.
Interesting. That's really interesting. Multiple onboardings.
Mm-hmm.
What'd you think of that?
It was one of the ones where I was a student first.
Yeah.
So honestly, for me, it was really easy to onboard because I had already done it.
Okay.
I was very like, every time a new person came in, I was like, I don't know how you guys learn this in a day. Like, I spent an entire rotation doing this,
sure.
and there's like a specific EMR that is like, they made it specifically for this company. And
that's really cool.
It was like, and then everything is written in shorthand. Like, I do not know how people learn this in a day.
That's pretty funny.
Yes, I'm glad that I didn't have to do that.
You had time to soak it in.
Right. Actually, speaking of, Hailey P says, the most helpful part of onboarding was learning our EMR because I came from a school that just did paper documentation. I kind of did a crash course, if that makes sense, with one of the assistant ATCs, such as how to check athletes' paperwork, enter documentation, what the athlete sees on their end versus ours, etc. And I was really surprised that actually so many people talked about EMR because I totally forgot about the onboarding of EMR and how important that is, especially when you don't know it.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, understanding how to use your EMR is super important. Obviously, from the basics of just, is this kid eligible? How do I put this kid's injury in?
Well, even like I've used sportswear before, but like the sportswear I'm using right now is different than the way that we were using sportswear at my last job, and different from the way that I did it at like some other places. So.
Oh, and that's what I was going to say is, as you get more comfortable with your EMR, like, you can learn all the cool things that you can do with it that you're like, man, I wish I knew that years ago.
Right.
Like, same thing with, like with sportswear. Like, I'm working with sportswear again, and like, oh my gosh, because I've had not so great EMRs in the past, all these things that I can do that I've learned for sportswear, I'm like, oh my God, this is so cool. So EMRs.
That part of the onboarding process is very underrated.
For sure.
Another underrated, do you want to read this next anonymous one?
Yes, Anonymous says, claim forms, which I 100% agree with. The most unhelpful part was figuring out on my own / asking colleagues as the semester progressed, as opposed to a one-day sit-down with the head AT going over policies and procedures. For example, filling out claim forms in the event we have to send an athlete for referral / immediate care. I still get confused on what to do with the form, to be honest. Yes, claim forms are a pain in the butt to deal with.
I don't think they're that bad.
Like, it's just annoying.
Right.
Like, especially because they're different wherever you go. So, like, you learn one, and then you may go to another place, and then it's a completely, like, in general, it's the same, but it's also different with what they're going to ask you and what you need to put.
Here's another philosophy that I just want to like talk about. So, you know how I talked about before, the like lax kind of versus the structured. Like, I am generally like, okay, you do you, whatever you want to do, but for an example for this, like it really does suck when you don't get a structured onboarding, because it puts, I don't think the people who are like in the not structure, like just figured out, like I don't think they realize it, but like how many times does that put the new person in a position that they have to say, hold on, let me go ask, which I feel like is undermining to that new person.
Yeah, it sucks. Makes you feel incompetent.
Right. And you're already struggling with the idea that you're the new person. Like, that really sucks that you have to like continue to be the new person, even like months and a year plus in, right?
Also, it delays care, or delays what you're doing too a little bit.
Right.
Because like, maybe not for like the claim form thing, but like for other things, like you said, if you have to like, oh, well, let me check.
Well, even like how, and I'm going to go back to this example again, like how to deal with a concussion.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I would hate for someone to mistake that as like incompetence in care.
Yes. Versus
just not knowing what the process is at your job.
Yeah, for sure.
Because no one told you.
For sure. 100%.
This is another good point. Hailey said the best go-to person for questions and concerns is helpful to know who is on your side.
100%. I think it is nice, kind of like what one of the other stories brought up was having a point person that does onboarding, because then you kind of know that person I can go to with questions. I mean, hopefully, like your staff is willing to help when you have a question, of course. Right. But it is,
and
nice
I think
to have
that everyone mostly is.
Yes, yeah.
I don't think I've really heard of people who like aren't that helpful.
For sure.
For the most part, I feel like people are generically helpful in each other's successes.
But it could also be intimidating.
Right.
Like I haven't really talked to this person, and one of my first interactions is just gonna be a question.
Right.
You know, I mean,
it's a conversation starter.
It's true, but like again, like if you're new and like you're at a D1 and there's like 15 like people, it can be scary. It can be a little intimidating to maybe like, oh, I don't want to sound stupid. Right. So it is nice if you do have that point person for onboarding. Hey, you're familiar with this person. This person's been teaching you. So yeah, right. I get that. Like who to kind of go to for questions.
Do you want to read the next one?
Yes, this one's by Kjersten. Kjersten says, most helpful thing is to get everyone's phone numbers. Definitely you'll need coaches and admin. I would say don't forget about assistant coaches. Sometimes they're a little more in touch with the players and can break news to head coaches if they're not very approachable. Also, they know the schedule too.
Yes.
And they're nicer about letting you know. I also like to keep custodial in mind and make sure you have quick connection with whoever your mental health resource is. On college campuses, sometimes that's campus safety or the health center. At high schools, sometimes it's the nurse or the guidance counselor, depending on the situation. Definitely, yes. Just yes to the entire thing. But the custodial staff...
underrated.
Your best... I've noticed the best friends of any staff are the custodial staff and the equipment staff. Those are my homies. My custodial staff does take care of me. I had some like dark spots from like the adhesive. He always comes and be like, I'm gonna try something to clean that out.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, it was very nice.
Mine wrote my name on my doorstop.
That was nice of him.
I know, it's still there. I'm not there anymore. Well, actually, I don't know if it's still there because I haven't been there in a while.
We'll have next time we're there.
Me and my co-head. That's what it said.
Yeah, we'll have to check it out.
We will. Another good point from Savannah B. It's helpful to know how to go about ordering. It was briefly mentioned to me. I'm pretty sure the exact phrase was, this is your budget, so order what you need within that.
Cool.
I had to go on my own to our business manager to go through the whole process of getting the PO and tax exemption forms. I even found out my budget was larger than I was initially told. I get to use any supplier I want, which was huge.
That is huge.
All they asked is that I can explain why I need an item if I was ever asked.
Nice. Well, that's always a happy surprise when you find out your budget's bigger.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Also, speaking of budgets and suppliers, I think Savannah B is one of our giveaway winners from Medco.
We had to fit that in again.
Right. I thought that was very fitting that she sent in this story. So some other things that we have that people submitted about putting in their onboarding. The biggest one that people talked about was policies and procedures.
Yeah.
And not just like, here is where they are, but like actually going over them. EAPs, same thing, going over them. I think that one's even more important because it's not like you have the time to actually like look back, you know. Team doc and referral process. This one I feel like gets overlooked.
Yes, I'd agree.
Documentation and clearances, communication styles of coaches. I think those are the main ones.
Yeah, I agree. I think the team doc and referral process is underrated. Like, again, it's like we talked about. Like, we know you can be an athletic trainer. Like, obviously, oh, this needs to be referred.
Right.
But knowing who and how you're supposed to or how they like it, even not even just getting the appointment, right? Just even like, okay, how does this doc like being communicated with?
Right. Can you text them? Do they like using names in text, or do they really stay away from that, or do they not like texting at all, or do they only do the things in email?
Emojis?
Or
I have a doc that sends emojis. It's pretty fun.
That is pretty fun.
It is. Yeah, no, for sure. Like that's and that makes a big impact on your day to day.
Right. I've had one place that has had like one main team doc, and that was kind of all we went through. And then I have another place that was, we have one main surgeon, and then we have one main non-surgical ortho, and then we have one hand specialist, and we have a foot specialist, and we have a neurologist, and we have literally like every specialty you can think of. And then we have like ones for this type of insurance, and we have ones for this type of insurance, and like, and I have a running page of just. I was
gonna say that probably needs a lot of onboarding.
Right, right. Actually, so what I was gonna go about earlier was that document that was originally used from our athletic director.
Uh-huh.
I was like, oh, this would be genius to like write down everything as I'm onboarding.
Yeah.
Like write down everything I need to know so then I can pass it on.
Yeah.
Right. So when I was going to leave my job, I started putting that together. And then also because I'm the type of person that if I don't write something down, then I will literally forget it. So like I was even writing down like stupid little tiny details, like what printer is a color printer.
Yeah.
And what printer is like not a color printer.
That's good to know.
Because I will literally forget. And you know what? Someone else is going to need to know one day.
That's good to know.
So like things like that, or like which key is like open what, like things like that. But I call it an AT go-to document, and I put it together, and it's like all the contact information, our supplier, clearances, what we were supposed to do at the end of each year, which I actually use every year. I go back and I'm like, okay, what are the things I'm supposed to do in sportswear? Like, okay, I have to clear the insurance cards. I have to clear this.
Yep.
I have to undo the paperwork settings. Like, and it kind of has like a checklist. And where do I put these files? Oh yeah, it goes in this file. And so it's just honestly as much for me as it is for like onboarding other people.
For sure.
But it's growing, and like, where do we do laundry? And
again, a good thing to know.
Kind of just stuff you don't think about when you get the job.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, for sure.
Packing lists and
yeah.
I can go on. And it keeps growing because there's more I'm learning about my job every day.
Yeah, you learn new things, or you remember new things.
And that's the thing is, like, you don't in onboarding, you don't necessarily need to go over 100% of the job. You won't go over 100% of the job.
It's almost impossible, and that you don't have the time.
I think it's mostly the most important, like EAPs, policies, doc referrals, documentation, like the big ones.
Yeah.
Some of the things I remember, one of my jobs, my coaches would come up to me and ask me questions that they knew my coworkers would have different things to say about, because they knew I was new and knew that I didn't know, but they would see what they could get away with.
Of course.
So that was like, oh man, I wish. Like, that's something you don't think about in onboarding, right?
For sure. I liked what you said about the physicians. Like, I like the like one that I like is like you have one, like, hey, he's your like medical, or he or she is your medical director. And so that kind of takes care of overarching thing, and then you have your orthos. So like then you can like specifically ask them based on whatever athlete they saw. I do like that, especially from a standpoint of, if I know this kid, this injury might be a surgical case, just send them to the ortho instead of seeing one doc to then go see another doc.
Right.
You know, I do like that part of like having like that, kind of like what you were saying, like what you have now is like, that's a big list.
Yeah,
where to go.
My current job has a very big list.
But I do like that aspect of it, because it does hopefully help expedite some of the care that, like, if it's a hand injury, well, let's just send you to the hand specialist.
Right.
I like that. That's cool.
Right. For students, do you do an onboarding process with your students?
Not as intensive as I've seen other places. So we're trying to work on hopefully maybe changing that. But yeah, I've seen some that it is a little more intensive that I think is very beneficial for the students.
We have different levels of students. Like, we have students in a master's program, several different master's programs, and then we also have volunteer students
Mhm.
who are, some of them are in undergrad from different colleges. Some of them are students of our community college. And some of them are just kind of people who are trying to get hours.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Sounds less common, but so we just kind of have a different variety.
Yeah.
We do the same kind of onboarding process, I guess. We do an intro day,
Yeah.
but then we do a separate onboarding for our master's students,
Which is awesome. That's cool.
and we kind of get the best of both worlds. I'm going to go into a couple different stories of how people do onboardings differently.
Mm-hmm.
But I was surprised to find out that actually 72% of people said yes, they do an onboarding with their
That's
students.
awesome.
Only 15% said sometimes, and then 13% were like, they'll learn along the way.
Yeah.
Which I feel like
we've seen, everybody has probably seen both when they were students.
Right. I feel like with students, it's a little bit easier to do the kind of like they'll learn along the way, because again, they're not necessarily responsible for what's the word I'm looking for?
Like they're not responsible, like basically not responsible for the program as far as like directing someone's care.
Right. And even if you have them like take over for the day, like you don't do that on the first day.
Yeah, no.
You know? So I feel like it's a lot different to onboard a student than it is to onboard for a job.
And you're not, like, obviously, like, we want our students to get as close to being like autonomous as we can safely with us being there. But you're not training them, like, you're not onboarding them to be an autonomous clinician. Like when an employee is being, like, you are trying to get them onboarded to, you should be able to just go.
But that's the thing too, is I always give the disclaimer to my students that what we do here is working at this college, right? So like we are going to do this because this is the way, like we have to fill out a claim form, or like whenever we run our EAP, we have to call campus safety. So like it doesn't necessarily mean that that's how it's going to be somewhere else.
Yes.
So like it's more for students. It's more about like learning how to be an athletic trainer than it is learning how to be an athletic trainer at our site. Like that's that's involved.
I think that's a good way of putting it. We're teaching them to be athletic trainers, but when you are an athletic trainer and you're hired, we already know you can do that.
Right.
We're trying to teach you how to do it at whatever place you're working. That's a good way of looking at it. So
I did ask, do you do a formal orientation day, or do you onboard each student in the first few days of the rotation? 47% said a gradual onboarding, which I think, again, with students is more common.
Yeah, I feel like that's more common.
And plus, like, I feel like the onboarding can be a little bit more teaching moments as well.
Yeah, for sure.
And so that's like, so for example, when I go over how to do like the cranial nerves bombs, SCAT6, and graded symptom checklist, and like basically like our whole like sway, whatever for concussions, like I'll do that all at once, but I'm not going to do that on the first day that they're there.
Yeah.
Or like I use symmetrical biphasic stim a ton, so I'm going to teach my students how to do that, but I'm not going to teach them that on their first day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
for sure.
That's like part of the teaching moments that we would do. I feel like that gradual onboarding of, there's some at the beginning, but then there's it mixes in with like teaching moments.
For sure.
27% said they do an orientation day and gradual onboarding. 18% said they do an orientation day, and 8% said neither.
They will learn as they go.
Well, that's gradual.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
We did get a couple of different, so I have someone who submitted a story about an hour. I have someone who submitted a story about 3 days. And then we do one orientation day and then for everyone, including our MSATs and volunteers, and then for my specific MSAT students, my master students, I have about like an hour. I think it usually takes an hour with them that I onboard them.
Nice. That's cool.
Or kind of like expectations from me.
Yeah. It's different for me because our site, like for us, the program that we work with, like we kind of all three share. Like we're all three the precept. Like they're basically assigned to the site kind of thing. And yeah, it's just different. I don't like, and especially I get it during the fall. Like I don't get the students as much just because like it's a fall rotation at a community college, right? You're gonna get football, right? And there's a lot more of an experience there. So yeah, it is kind of hard for me to also try and onboard them to now my facility, because that's the thing is we have two separate facilities, right? So like my layout is different than the other athletic training room. So then when they do come over, it's like they're learning a whole new athletic training room. So it would be nice to onboard them. It's just, again, it's hard to find the time to now add a second onboarding on top of them just getting here.
So Cassandra K says, we do an hour onboarding with our immersive students that starts with a mock interview process with each of our staff athletic trainers. Afterward, we run through an onboarding packet that is only slightly modified from what our staff onboarding process. We only get a couple students per year, so it's nice to onboard them individually so they can ask questions and talk about their expectations for the rotation.
The mock interview thing, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I really liked that too.
That's kind of a cool idea.
That's what I was saying.
Huh.
We're interested in what you asked them. I wonder if it's like a mock interview for the site, like you're getting a job there.
That's what I picture.
Or if it's a mock interview to get to know them.
Yeah. I mean, I picture it as like you were saying, like for the site, like it's pretending to be a job. That's kind of cool.
My last job, my co-head, she had mock interviews for the students. I mean, we did them together, but like it was her idea, and it was really cool. Like, I feel like it really helped them. I think they were terrified. I would have been terrified as a student. Some of them did really, really well. Interviews are kind of one of those things that you just have to do a bunch of times.
Yeah.
So
yeah, pretty much.
I think that helped. And also it helped us to get to know them a lot better.
Yeah.
Also, like, I think that resumes and cover letters are so subjective, but also they're so easy to mess up. Yeah. And so it's nice to get eyes on them. Just send them to as many people as you can.
For sure. And don't get discouraged because, like, again, like you said, they are so subjective. So some people like one thing, some people don't like that.
Right.
But then you're going to find someone who does actually like that and didn't like the other way. So, as long as it's presentable and it provides as much information as concisely as possible too, right? Like you just got to find a hybrid of providing all the information you think's important while not just rambling.
Right. So for my master's students, I usually get anywhere from 1 to 3 students, and sometimes I share. Like, I think right now I have 2. And then sometimes like I'll share 1. Or like my last job, like we just shared like the student, like you were saying, like they're just kind of assigned to the site. But whenever they're with me specifically, I just go over, just expectations of them. I go over hours. I add them to our calendar. I talk about like dress code and like kind of some of those basic things. We talk about goals, like what their strengths and weaknesses are, not so specifically like they're in an interview, but more like, okay, what did you learn at your last site that you feel like you're really comfortable with? What do you want to get out of this? I tell them like where my strengths are. So like what I hope to get, what I hope they get out of working with me. We go over, I make everyone take the Enneagram test.
That's awesome.
So then I figure out first of all, how well they know themselves. Also, so I get to learn what kind of personality and what kind of like motivates them. I know I talk about the Enneagram all the time. So you guys, if you have tuned into this podcast even once before, you've probably heard me talk about the spiel of like, it's not an outward personality. It's what motivates you and like where your values are. So me understanding where their values are and what they, kind of prioritize, it helps me to understand where I need to be as a preceptor. Like if they are an Enneagram 1, like I know they see the world black and white. And so that means when I'm working with them, then I am going to try to make like things that they don't understand. I might make them more black and white, or like I know that they might not relate to like the emotional side as well. So like, understanding that like when they're struggling, maybe not tapping into that, but when they're in a position of health, maybe tapping into that because it is one of their weaknesses. So then I'm able to get to know them a little bit more. Also, I tell them what personality I am, so then I can just have them understand what I need. Like, hey, I need like really direct communication. I need like bullet points. Just know when I'm talking like this, like it's not you, you know, so they understand, like get an expectation ahead of time. We also do a little facility tour, and then we just kind of do like expectations of like, it will differ if it's like a first year or a second year. Yeah. So just depending on, you know, where they are in the program and what or how many students we have and what I expect, if I expect them to take more of a leadership role or, you know, stuff like that. Yeah. No, I think that's all I do in like the first day. Yeah. And then we do an entire like a 4-hour day of intro for everyone, including the volunteers and the master students. Nice, that's cool. So we do, and you've come to. I have. We do. It's like more specific. Well, we do a big icebreaker with everyone, and then we talk about like in the athletic training room, like opening and closing duties. Sometimes I haven't done this in my current job, actually this one I do when we get new volunteer students, and master students actually, just so they get the layout. But we don't do it in the big intro day, but I do a scavenger hunt of the ATR. So I kind of put together a list of like one thing you need for wound care, like where's the rehab equipment, so then they can go do it. I used to teach a class that I used to time that, or like I'd set a timer, and then people would have to go take pictures of the things, and then they'd have to come back, and then the first 2 groups would get extra credit if they showed me all the pictures of everything in the ATR. So that was super fun. Nice. But I don't teach a class anymore, so I don't get any extra credit for doing it. Yeah. But it helps them figure out the ATR layout. Oh, for sure. And then new this year, we added basic rehab. That's cool. So that's a good idea. Because I'm trying to implement like more rehab, and that's something that the volunteers can really be empowered to do too. Because I'd really like them to get a little bit more like hands-on instead of just feeling like they can't do anything because like the master students do everything, right? But obviously like the master students have like a lot more knowledge and liability and stuff. Like obviously I'm not going to let the volunteers do like an injury evaluation or something, but also like the master students were training them to do exactly. Like their next step is literally being us, right? We do just talking about emergencies, like what's in our emergency backpack, and the AEDs, getting a layout of those. Obviously the EAPs, we went over CPR this time. I don't think we did that last time. Oh, really? I thought you guys did. I think last time we switched out because last time I think we did football log rolling or equipment removal and splinting, I think. And we did splinting both times this year and last year. I thought you did CPR, maybe not. Maybe we talked about it. Yeah, maybe. And then we just kind of did an overview of like how to fill up waters. I feel like that's something that you think is so basic, and then it's different at every site. Yeah, that's true. Like I had a site that I didn't know how to unplug the whirlpool. See? like things like that that are just like
little things that you just don't think of.
Right. Heat emergency, we practice, and then that's also a day that we can like practice. Like
Yes.
Our emergency practice day. We go over dress code and HIPAA.
Nice.
HIPAA is something that a lot of people commented about. They talk about with their students.
That's good. It's important.
Which is right. Is there anything you add to like an orientation day or anything you've done at an orientation day? Have you ever had an orientation day? Or do you just mostly do like an hour onboarding?
Man, that's a good question. I'm trying to think. Like all the places that I've honestly, every place that I've had students, we've never really done like an orientation day.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, we're trying to change it. We want to do that going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have my ideas for what I want to do, because same thing. Like I want to do some more prevention programming. So it'd be nice to have students to like, okay, here's how how to do the exercises. Here are the exercises.
Right.
Here's how to do them. So
and then they get more familiar for when they're
exactly. They can learn an exercise, and also I need them to learn how to describe it to an athlete instead of relying on me. Because now the whole idea of this is like, hey, they can get an exercise done while I'm doing something else. So yeah, I like that. I like when you guys did that this round with like going over exercise. I thought that was great.
And like we had it where I assigned it to my 2 students, and I was like, hey, I need you guys to come up with 2 hamstring exercises and 2 balance exercises and 2 ankle exercises and 2 shoulder, whatever the list.
Yeah.
And then I said, you have 30 minutes. You need to teach it to all the students. Yeah. So everyone has at least something in their pocket.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I want to do something more structured and like give them like an actual sit down to like, here's how we do things. And then like showing them the exercises, having them show exercise. I think that's great. I like that.
You ready for the 3-day orientation?
See, I like this. I like that idea. I think that's a great idea. I think it can really ease you into it, and like you feel like
at least understand everything.
Yeah, you feel like you have like a toolbox already going in instead of like, oh my gosh, there's a lot.
Right. I have some things to say, but I'm going to share it after we read this. Do you want to read this one?
Yes, this one's by Rosie P. As a student at my football rotation, there you go. That's what
that's all you need to know.
That's I understand why there's a 3-day rotation or orientation because it's football. There's a lot of moving parts. You need to know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Rosie continues with, we had 3 days that we came in prior to camp starting where we learned all the ins and outs of camp and in-season football. That's another thing that I think is important too, is the timing that they do it is like before like camp starting. So then one, like the students can hit the ground running like when it starts, but also too, like everyone has time to like do this, ask questions, go over things. Whereas like if it's like in the middle of like camp going on, or like you pick like a time of the day where maybe some people are coming in for treatments, it just makes it feel rushed and like busy. So I do like the timing of that too. We learned how to set up for practice, how to do different modalities, how to use and troubleshoot pumpers, how to clean the ATR, etc.
So then she actually sent some pictures in. So let's see. First day, Monday starts at 7:45 a.m. and it goes till 5 p.m.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I'm just going to read them out. 8 a.m. Compliance meeting. 8:30 daily training room maintenance list. Go over all duties and demonstrate. 9 a.m. taping the ankle braces, types and proper application. 9:30 football specific athletic training items. Fusionetics review. I don't know what that is. I've never heard of that.
Whoa. Neither have I.
Something fancy. That sounds cool.
I'll
And that, I mean, that's why this is on the onboarding.
Yeah.
Because if I were there, I wouldn't know what that was, right? Static stretching techniques for hamstrings, quads, low back, gastroc soleus, foam rollers, groin hip stretching routine, 10 a.m. EMT and spine boarding review, emergency action plan, on-field communication procedures, emergency equipment removal, using the extractors, the quick release, shoulder pad quick release. There's a time for lunch.
Oh, of course. Well, especially when you have a day like that.
Right. Stocking tables, review all contents of taping tables, mouthpiece making procedures. That's really cool. Inventory and product checkout procedures, football hydration program procedures, overview of modalities. So there's modalities lab, ice bags, ice machines, ice cold immersions, hot packs,
Heck yeah.
ultrasound, combo, TENS, BioWave, HivaMat. Oh, by the way, I heard it's not actually called the HivaMat, it's the HivaMat.
Nope, I refuse. It is the HivaMat.
We call it the HivaMat.
Unless
Russian.
HivaMat is listening, then it is HivaMat, I guess.
Yeah. Compex, light therapy, compression, Normatex, pumpers, maintenance, and then go home. Okay, that was day 1.
That was day 1.
Okay. Then day 2 starts at 8 a.m. and then open weight room hours, medical record keeping, login procedures, injuries versus problem definitions. Oh, I like that. Injuries versus problems.
Ooh. Oh, that's kind of, yeah, I do like that.
Kitman system overview, how to construct a proper SOAP note. I really love this. Referrals, football practice coverage, practice, organization, practice duties, injury communication, again, lunch. Policies on concussions and management, head injury evaluations, daily training room duties, field setup, specific duties for camp, morning, pre-practice, post-practice duties, stocking, like taping tables, drawers, jars, gator operation. Oh, that one's important.
Oh, goodness. Yes, it
okay,
is.
I had a job that I have never driven a John Deere before. And if you know what a John Deere is, it's not just like a turn the key and go.
Oh, no.
You have to, there's like multiple steps.
The gator needs to be treated nicely before it works.
And I have never even sat on one before this job. And I show up and I'm supposed to work this thing. And I have no idea, like the even beginning steps. So I'm pretty sure, did I call you?
I think so.
I called Randy and I was like,
yes, you did. Yes, you did.
I was like, please tell me, I can't get this thing to turn on. I don't know what I'm doing. Because you know what? It was in the way. I didn't even need to use it.
Yeah.
But it was in the way. Someone else needed to park somewhere. So then I had to move it out of the way. I think that's what it was. Yeah. And the first thing I had to do is back it up this really long hallway. So I'm like, of course I can't even get this thing to turn on. And then
I remember that.
So that was fun.
The gator.
Yeah. And it's super loud. Okay. That's day 2. And then one more. Oh, wait. Day 3? Is this? Okay. Day 3. Welcome. Introduction of staff. Athletic training. Staff organizational structure, program overview, history, expected qualities, athletic training services for football, treatment and rehab philosophies, tour, the athletic training room rules, more setup stuff, and then they start on the next day.
Nice.
Crazy,
nice.
Right?
You know what? Actually, it brings up a good point about like the like that first day, that compliance meeting. A lot of people are like, oh, why are we in the compliance meeting? No, if you like, especially at the NCAA level, like it is like good for us to understand compliance because there's little things that you don't think of that are against compliance rules. Now, the NCAA does a good job of letting the medical staff, like, you do whatever you need to do to take care of people. Mm-hmm. But like, even from the simple standpoint, like, say you had an athlete come in and be like, oh, can I print something off your computer? That answer is immediately no. Because that is a compliance violation for 2 reasons. One, it's an extra benefit. Mm-hmm. Because if, like, no other regular student can go in there and print something, right? Violation.
Wow.
Next, if that kid was, like, cheating on something, they have your IP address, violation.
Wow. Because
if a student submitted homework off that computer and like they're accused of cheating or anything like that, they could be like, oh, well, it was your computer, right? You'd be like, yeah. You helped them cheat. That's what happened to a mid-major program. Like really? Their coach was submitting homework from their laptop, and who knows if it was actual cheating, but it was that laptop.
Oh, dang.
They weren't supposed. So it's those little things that, again, you wouldn't consider.
Yeah.
So that's why, like, don't laugh at the compliance meeting. It's important.
So what I was going to say actually about this, like, setup is, honestly, for some of these rotations, it might be the only time that you get to go over some of these things.
For sure. 100%.
So, like, for the fall versus the spring for us, like, our spring is so much lighter than our fall.
Mm-hmm.
Our spring, we get a lot of downtime with the students. We get a lot of time to really take the time to sit down and, like, learn stuff. I think we do a good job in the fall that we have at least one time a day that we're sitting down and learning something new. But in the spring, like, we have a lot more time. Like when we're working with someone, we could be like, okay, watch this. Let's be really slow and methodical and, like, work through.
I think you guys do a good job with your students.
Thank you.
You guys do a great job.
I think so too. But for example, like, if I'm going to go over something even simple, like how I stretch an upper extremity or how I stretch a shoulder, like, I do a whole, like, 8 stretch routine. Like, I can't do that in the middle of fall season, in the middle of treatments.
Oh, yeah.
I can do that, like, before treatments, or I could do that in the week, like, before. But sometimes it's helpful that they already know that. So, like, some of these things that, like, some people might be like, man, why are they doing all these things that they should be learning during the season anyway? But if you learn them all ahead of time, like, you can't have the argument of, like, then you just strengthen it during the season.
Yeah. And also too, like, it theoretically,
Mm-hmm.
the idea is saving time to where I don't have to teach them when it's, like, the room's cracking.
Right.
Like, they should theoretically just know. Now, of course, like, they're not going to be masters
perfect,
at it. Yeah. But at least a basic idea of how to do these things is a huge help.
Mm-hmm.
So I get that.
Right. I think too, so that when you are explaining things, like, they have a basis of understanding because you had already introduced the topic ahead of time.
Yeah.
And then now you're like, okay, let's apply it,
mm-hmm.
Rather than I'm not saying this is a bad thing, but rather than, like, applying it right off the bat, it's just different,
It's different.
I think you do both in many different ways.
And it depends what you're comfortable with too. Like I said, like, if you don't want to necessarily deal with that, like, when you're super busy, right, then this might be a route to go. Whereas, if you're super busy and it's okay to, like, sit and, like, have that time to do that, and that's fine. I think it just depends what you want out of that experience for the students.
Mm-hmm. I think this is also good for any students listening who are going into a rotation. You can try to figure out what, like, of the few different places that we talked about and the few different onboarding that we talked about, you can kind of figure out what, when you start your next rotation, like, what expectations you need to set with your preceptor, or if you're a preceptor, like, maybe you want to change some of the onboarding that you're doing, or, I'd love to hear what you guys are doing with your students, because I always love to add on to ours.
For sure.
I didn't really share it before. I said we do an icebreaker, but at the beginning of our orientation day, we do this thing called the name game that is, like, my favorite thing ever. It's like, I used to do it in all my classes, but now I don't teach. So now I do it with every orientation day. And it's basically this icebreaker that we have 4 treatment tables, or, like, 4 seats that are, it's like, I think in the actual game, I adapted it from a game that is different, but I made it an icebreaker game. So it's like the couch. You make it like the couch. So you have 4 seats that are like the couch, right? And you are trying, and then you get every single person on 2 teams. So every other person, you put them on 2 teams. And then your team, either team 1 or team 2, you're trying to get your team on the couch. The only way you can move someone is if you say their name. Yep. If you say their name, that name has to get up and move to the empty chair. There's always one empty chair. So if there's 4 seats on the couch and then there's, like, 8 other seats, right? So that would be 12 seats. And then that would mean that only 11 people are playing, right? Well, You'd probably want an even number, but I guess it doesn't really matter that much. But basically whoever's to the right of or the left of whatever you're playing, whoever's next to the empty chair is the person who gets to say a name, and that name gets to get up and move to the empty chair. It's super fun. It's pretty quick. I get to see who gets called on the most, whose name people knows. You have to say people's names over and over and over and over and over again. So then you're getting like, you hear a name or you say a name and then you see that person walk. So it's like really strengthening like names, which I really like. Also I get to see who's competitive. Obviously that's fun. I get to see who's a natural leader. I get to see who talks more, who's not getting called on, who is like quiet or like a silent leader, because there are those too.
Yep.
I just feel like there's so much that you can learn from this, like, and it gets people comfortable.
Yeah.
So I just really like to start with it. I feel like I get a good idea of how the group meshes.
Yep, for sure.
And it's a fun, it's just fun. I love playing games, so it's just fun.
It is fun.
I even got Randy playing it in his classes.
That's right. Except for I didn't play it right the first time. I used it in class because I didn't play.
You didn't?
No, I just watched.
Oh.
But
I mean, you can, I guess.
Yeah. I know. I was just saying.
It's just more fun if you play. I always tell them, whoever's on my team, you better win. My team lost this year.
Yeah.
Take it. Who picks up strategy?
Yeah.
It's really cool to see. And it's something like not athletic training, you know?
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Is that all we have for onboarding?
I think so. Yeah. It's one of those things that it is super important, and like when you've been through an onboarding process that probably wasn't what you were hoping it to be.
Mm-hmm.
And it puts you really behind the 8 ball right off the bat, and then it just feels like you're playing catch up a lot.
Right.
So yeah, onboarding, even though it doesn't seem super important, it can make all the difference to someone who's new, whether it be a student or a staff member.
That was a great closing.
Thank you.
I really liked that. So if you guys are new, welcome back to season 5. Welcome,
Here we go.
Welcome to AT Corner. We have a bunch of cool, fun things in the show notes. We're actually making some changes this year. So if you are not new, stay around for a couple seconds as we tell you these things. One thing, every episode before this, literally every single episode before this, we used to do in a format of every other episode. It was education or stories. We are changing that. We have such a variety of interviews. We have story episodes. We have education episodes that are sometimes they're CU episodes. Sometimes they are like spotlight interviews. Sometimes we have people on. So if you pay attention to the episode art, you can tell what type of episode it is, but we are no longer doing the every other format. It's also going to open it up a ton more because we're not so bound to like the next one has to be a story episode or the next one has to be an education episode. So it kind of gives us a little bit more leeway for bringing more fun things to you guys.
And maybe I can build the reference list up a little bit more on these education episodes, and I'm sure that's what everybody wants.
Right. I'm sure they're going to read just as many articles as you do.
Maybe more. Maybe more.
So our CEUs are, we have CEUs on various episodes. You can tell if they are a CEU episode because it says in the show notes, and we say it in the episode. We will be our CEUs are all through Clinically Pressed and Athletic Training Chat. Thank you. Big thank you to them.
Big thank you.
Big thank you to them. So in this year, we're still keeping the format that all of our new CU episodes will be on the website. I believe they are going to add more as we're working through, and then
Yes.
they're all free right now, so take advantage of that while you can. Next year, look out for some new changes and how to get CUs. Still keeping some free, definitely. So keep an eye on that. All of our Instagram is the most up-to-date information that you can find. Instagram and our website. Everything that I'm talking about is down in the show notes. So if you're new, make sure you scroll down, check out everything there. We have a couple of cool links. We're still working with MedBridge. You can use AT Corner for $150 off your subscription.
It is never too early.
And don't forget, this is literally the end of a non-reporting year, which means that if you get your subscription now, then that means that you can have that subscription for
The reporting year.
through the now and the reporting year.
Yep.
Yeah, because it's a year.
It'd be a full year.
So we have MedBridge. We love it. We sit down and we watch it because
Heck
we're
yeah.
nerdy, but you should too because it's good for you. Eat your veggies.
That's great. I think that's a great ending spot right there.
Was there any other updates? Any other changes that we're making?
I mean, that was the big one.
Yeah.
The format was the big one.
I think the other thing is I have no idea what day we're releasing every episode.
That's true. We've kicked that around too.
We used to tune in, message us, let us know what you guys think, because we used to do Mondays. We changed it to Wednesdays. This year,
change it again.
Yeah, we're probably gonna change it again. Honestly, I think it might be different every week. Like, I think just whenever,
we're just rolling when we can.
Honestly, guys, we're in the last year of our DAT program, and it is not for the faint of heart sometimes. But
what? It's been fun.
It is fun. It is fun. So just let us know when do you guys listen to this? Are you I would love to know. I listen to podcasts
I wish we had data on
while
that.
I do the laundry and while I drive sometimes. I don't really drive that much anymore.
I wish the publishing, who we publish through, had that data, day of the week. What are the?
I think it does.
Does it?
Well, you can see.
I guess I could see daily plays. Okay, that's fair. I don't know. I wish they.
We'd rather hear from you guys.
Yeah.
So I have no idea. I know this is coming out on a Saturday, which is super weird, but we start every year on the 17th because that's a lucky number for us. So
heck yeah,
we're gonna continue doing that, even though it's a Saturday. I don't think we've ever released on a Saturday before. That's super random.
I don't think so either.
But let us know.
Hey, for all of those people in football camp, you're welcome.
I know. Seriously, I don't know. But yeah, let us know when you guys would like us to release, and we'll totally look into it. I wish I had a definite answer because this is being released. I have no idea what our schedule is going to be, but again, it's not going to be every other episode, but you are still going to get plenty of awesomeness. Okay, we're just rambling now. That's all I have.
Thank you for helping us showcase athletic training behind the tape. Bye.